Yep. Coffee Conversations with Greg J is on. Good morning. Yes. Man, so many things happening around our world. And that's where we like to get together and sip our coffee and just have casual, culturally relevant discussions about what's going on all around us. Turning our lens today to mental health. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And it's interesting to, you know, see the emphasis or notice the emphasis on this special time around the country. People are talking about their mental health situations. Remember, they had the Olympics, and some of our biggest stars said, look, got to have a mental break, got to take a break for my wellness. My good friend Jose Angel Castro says mindfulness. That's what's going on out here. But it's a thing, right? We really need to pay attention to our mental health and how do we stay centered. A lot is going on around us that can cause, I guess, mental trauma. Gas is high, rent's high. We don't know, what's going to happen in government, social justice, COVID-19. Oh my goodness, so much. So one of my favorite mental health professionals in the whole wide world, Shatonia Tapp, where are you? Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing all right, thank you. How are you today?
I'm awesome. I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Shatonia, I know you are a Hall of Famer in your field, and this is just what I know. And I would love to see, your immediate thoughts as we begin to speak about mental health awareness. How important is it that we center ourselves mentally? And why
You
don't
know,
Black folks talk about it?
it's a stigma, of course, with the African American culture. Going to therapy, mental health is like a curse. But I think the times are changing. The world is changing. There are a lot of things going on, as you mentioned, and we have to now, you know, open our eyes, start seeing out a different lens to look at how our mental health, you know, can impact, our daily lives. You know,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's spiritually or you're just going to the beach and meditating or whatever, or your church affiliation with your church, whatever it is. Everyone needs to take time out to decompress and refocus and start fresh the next
Mm-hmm.
day.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, are you seeing an increase in your cases as a mental health therapist?
um, I've been doing this over 20 years altogether.
Mm-hmm.
um, there is there is an increase in the acute cases that I've worked with in the past. Um, the families and the kids that I've provided services to in the past, um, it was usually just a child acting out at home, um, parents with substance use, for
Mm-hmm.
example. But now we're seeing more acute cases of, I believe, the parents or the caregivers needing that extra help for their mental health, to help the kids as well, or their sons or daughters or whatever. So, yeah, it's increased over the past, I would say, 10 years.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Well, you mentioned, finding ways to, balance it with church or meditation and all of that. And I know one person here is joining us to have coffee there or tea, or he's levitating in from the Now House education group. Jose Angel Castro. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really well, Greg. Thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Meet Shatonia Tapp, one of the best therapists in the whole wide world.
Very nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. Good
You
morning.
know, you
Good
know,
morning.
Jose. Now you have a very interesting way of helping people find this balance that Shatonia talked about, right? This
Hmm.
like meditative. I mean, you've got a few things going on there. Just give people a little bit of your background, and then what types of, I guess, healing practices do you share with folks who may be trying to find some relief in their mental health?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. This is an incredibly important conversation to be having, so I'm really happy to be having it. Um, Most of my work right now is centered around this very theme, and my work is kind of eclectic, including my practices as an artist are all centered around this theme of finding balance in life, of making life a little bit better. And it's become really evident to me in these last 36 months, especially the last 24 months with the pandemic and with the convergence of all these different global and what I would say are existential crises. Um, it's really apparent that we need to be focused on taking care of ourselves. We need to be focused on the mental health aspect and the wellness aspect. So a couple of things that are going on for me right now is I'm a teacher. So as a teacher, when I do wellness seminars or workshops, um, different learning experiences, it really is bent to giving people tools and what I consider technologies for balancing life out a little bit. So this weekend, for instance, as part of the We Rise initiative for LA County, We Rise LA, a partner of mine and I, her name is Regina Black, we're putting on a mini wellness conference in Long Beach at the East Village Arts Park, as in conjunction with the work you're doing, Greg. Um, and we're offering 4 workshops centered around creativity, centered around arts-based healing, centered around mindfulness. We're going to do a sound bath, followed by a creative writing workshop, followed by a kinetic painting workshop, and finally we'll do an intro to Reiki. And all of these are different technologies, as you all were talking about before I got on, just ways to shift focus, ways to pivot away from the feelings that you're having at this moment, which might be overwhelming, which might be negative, finding tools and technology to pivot away from those feelings and refocus um, back into the present. Having trouble hearing you, Greg.
Can't hear you.
All right.
There he is. He's back.
So yeah, we're gonna talk. We were gonna talk about that a little later on in the show here. Let me just kind of layer out a little bit more. So, Shatana, you said something very interesting to me, and I want to say, earlier about. So at first, early in your career, it was like children acting out and everything. And let me just ask you, if it appears like we're seeing a lot more enraged young people. I'm just going to keep it real right here, right? And so, like, is this because of environment? Is it in the water? Is it drugs folks are smoking? Or what's going on with the increase of the rage in our community? I mean, the young people are having straight up temper tantrums. Not all. I'm just seeing. We're speaking in the world of mental health.
Right. Um, and I want to keep it real as well.
Mhm.
um, I think a lot of parents are a lot of young parents are raising children. And
Mhm.
so, we have a lot of millennials, um, and we have a lot of, you know, kids who are not raised the way things used to be, if I can
Mhm.
say. Um, the kids they need a lot of attention. Um, there's social media that they're being um, smothered in. You know, uh, the the parents or caregivers are busy working or are not spending enough time um, with the kids so that they can understand the cues and all of the signs that when my child is angry, I don't know why. There's a lot of bullying in the schools, and the kids are not communicating with their parents. No one's taking the time out. Well, a lot of people are not taking the time out to sit down and listen and communicate with the younger people about how was your day in school, what happened. Uh, little Johnny hit me, and I felt this way, etc., etc. No one is sitting down and, well, I won't say no one. A lot of people are not sitting down when the child gets home and asking them, how was your day? What went on? Did something bother you today? So you're going to see a lot of that. And then that just builds that rage, that anger, where the child feels like no one is listening. And
Mhm.
so they're looking at social media for guidance.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
there's a lot going on, a lot of influences from social media.
Right. So, as a therapist, do you see like arts programs, music, all of that as helpful outlets for the young people who may be in those types of environments? And if they had access to the arts or better access to the arts in their schools, do you think that is a good remedy towards what we're describing?
It's I would say 50% of that that will help, and
Hmm.
it's research has proven that has
50%.
helped, whether it's be the arts or of course sports. The kids have been a part of, and then just understand, and that still goes back to understanding who your child is, what their needs are, what they want,
Mhm.
what makes them thrive.
Mhm. Mhm. All right, I just want to take that point and just pivot to the executive director of the Arts Council for Long Beach came through. Let's see, Griselda Suarez. Good morning. Griselda, you are the executive director of one of the top, arts organizations in the whole, state, if not the country. So let me ask you, you heard Shatonia talk about, arts and the connection. And I know that your work is really robust in the school systems. How, in your heart, what is the importance of arts towards mental health?
Good morning, buenos dias, everybody. Thank you for giving me the invite today. And today is Mother's Day in Mexico, and so for all folks out there who are moms or grandmas or aunts or ninas, all motherly figures, have a wonderful day today. So thank you again for inviting us and allowing us to take a moment to talk about how arts and mental wellness intersect. And I think that oftentimes in classroom settings, children, either elementary school or middle school or young adults in high school, are not given the opportunity to make things. And this goes back to even shop class, right? Um, Making something, creating something, and providing some space mentally to concentrate differently has a large impact on mental health, on well-being. Being able to focus on something and not being constrained, restrained with testing expectations, curriculum expectations. Not that there isn't arts curriculum, because there is, but I think there's just a little bit more breathing room. And so for me, art class when I was in middle school and high school were really important to just give me a moment to relax a bit. And so our partnership this month in May with LA County Mental Health is trying to find those intersections with artists and performers that give everyone an opportunity to express themselves when maybe possibly you cannot express yourselves verbally. Have that conversation. So hopefully the arts can aid. It's not the solution, but I think it is a good tool to use and to enhance quality of life and mental health.
Oh, you brought up shop class. Man, that brings back memories. I made my first radio in shop class. That's how I learned about the airwaves and everything. Wowzer! It's funny. We were at an event at one time at the Washington Middle School over in Long Beach, and I noticed, the school is kind of like that WPA era architecture, right? And at the top it said metal shop. And I was like, oh wow, they don't do that anymore.
Greg, if I could add to something that Shatonia said earlier, and around this theme, in dealing with kids, I deal with kids a lot as a teacher, and specifically dealing with kids in our communities. Now, my name is Jose Angel Castro. I happen to be both African American and Afro Latinx. So I have this sort of interesting cultural bridging thing that happens for me. And I think at the heart of, to expand on this, I think at the heart of it is culturally, we don't have access to vulnerability, right? And as such, since we're often told culturally to suppress our feelings, because historically being vulnerable was dangerous, quite literally, keeping it real, quite literally being vulnerable was dangerous out in the world. African Americans, we certainly have that that embedded feeling as Black people in this country, that being vulnerable would only get you in trouble, right, for whatever reason. So, and certainly in our Latinx community, we have the same thing. So when you're dealing with gigantic feelings like the ones that have come up for these kids in the last 2 years, right? You have to figure that 24 months in the life of a 14-year-old is a huge percentage of their life. And they're dealing with these giant existential things that they don't know how to process. One of the only ways that it's going to be expressed is through anger, because we don't have access to a whole spectrum of emotion that we could be vulnerable and have those conversations. And that's both as children and as parents, right? So a lot of parents in our communities don't know how to broach those topics. And quite frankly, no matter what culture you come from, what I'm seeing is that a lot of kids, nobody's talking to them. Nobody's asking them the question, how you doing? How has this pandemic impacted you? Are you aware of these? How do you feel about the environment? What is that doing for or to you? Because these are extremely relevant topics for kids today. And I would say that demographic goes from like middle school, 12 years old, 11 years old, to a little bit post-college, post-university, 30 about now, right? That for that group, that 2 years is a huge percentage of life, right? And in our communities, if we're not given permission to be vulnerable and say, I'm afraid, I'm hurting, I feel anxious, if we don't have permission for that, it's going to come out in, negatively perceived behavior, right? But even that negatively perceived behavior is an indication of something greater. If you don't peel back those layers, you won't find what that is. And
Mhm.
what I'm seeing and anecdotally in my work is that when kids are given the opportunity to make something, to create something, then that vulnerability can come to the surface in the work that they're doing, and they're more open to having these types of conversations and talk. The number of times
Yeah.
I've heard kids like say, "Oh, this is tough.
Mhm.
This is really tough," while they're painting something.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I'd like to pivot on that point right now and bring in our other friend in this space, mental health awareness. Candy Lewis. You're hearing all of this great stuff. First of all, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm
Good
Yes.
morning.
hearing this amazing work and much respect to each one of you. Oh,
All right. What are your thoughts? Kind of. I'm listening to Jose Angel Castro talk about vulnerability and what the whole thing that he just spoke just reminds me of the last time you and I were on this page about mental health and what people are going through and the reluctance to speak out and whatnot. What are some of your thoughts after as you heard our brother Jose Angel Castro?
so I agree with everything. Let me just say this. There's so many different reasons why our children are in decline. Our children are in decline because of COVID. Our children are in decline because they don't have the tools and the resources necessary. We already knew before COVID even hit that our children, and I'm speaking specifically of Black and Brown children, were already seeing a serious increase, like a 70% increase of suicide attempts. And so when we look at the fact that there's trauma, the underlying trauma that comes in different forms, including intimate partner violence, domestic violence that they see at home. And children think that they're the cause of it. And then because adults tell them to sit down and shut up, and they don't have a way to speak their truth, then it holds anything that you hold in is going to eventually bubble over and explode. And so the important thing about art is that it allows a person who is not able to speak their truth to get it out in some form or fashion. And that is really essential that we allow our children to have a say and we speak to them and not put them down for their feelings because a lot of people do. We tell our kids that you don't know anything, that you need to sit down and be quiet, but they are brought in this world intelligent and insightful. And when we beat them down, they feel very less than. And so it's important that we continue to inspire our children and help them to feel validated in their feelings.
Thank you so much. Maybe just take a brief moment and let everybody know who Candy Lewis is.
So I'm the CEO of Positive Results Center. We're a nonprofit in Los Angeles, specifically in Gardena, and we address trauma from a cultural and age perspective. We specialize in intimate partner violence, sexual assault, and bullying. And we work with youth and young adults, teaching them everything that we know, not only to educate them on what violence and abuse is, even though they know it, but as you all said before, no one's speaking to the kids. So they only have a small perception of it. We give them the full understanding so that they're less likely to say, wow, I heard that and I didn't know what to say, or I saw that and I didn't know what to do. We teach them what to say, what to do, what not to say, and what resources. We also have a group of youth and young adults starting around 17 to 25 that we've taught to be mental health peer ambassadors. So they understand the different forms of mental health and how it shows up in culturally. And then they go and train other youth using art to be very expressive. Some of the work that we've done is we hold a youth spoken word event. Is spoken word for mental health. And it's so important. You know, people think I don't know why people think kids are stupid or why kids don't know. Kids are the smartest people in the world. Let's go back to that TV show. Who's smarter than a fifth grader? Surely no one I know. No one I know. I think the only person smarter than a fifth grader may be a fourth grader. But kids are insightful, they're intelligent, they're vibrant. But this world is harsh. Consider the fact that we as adults have a difficult time managing, maneuvering, and working our way through this world. We ourselves are constantly in trauma. We ourselves are constantly suffering from some kind of mental, emotional health. And then we expect our children to be just like they shouldn't experience these things, but they do. And because we don't consider the fact that children have a limited vocabulary, when they try to get things out, if they're not quick enough or if they're not in that space where we want to hear them, we will break them down and tell them, sit down, shut up, you don't know what's going on, get it out, hurry up. And that puts increased stress and stress on the child. And so then, all other forms of depression, anxiety, PTSD. Oh, and let me say this. I'm sorry. Did I say PTSD? There's no such thing as PTSD. PTSD is in post. We're still living in trauma every single moment of the day. So it is CTSD, continued traumatic stress disorder.
All right, Shatonia, our resident therapist here. What's your thoughts?
I agree with, everyone, but I do think that parents they're just not aware, or caregivers, they're not aware, again, of the cues that the kids come home and they don't talk to them. I believe that the kids need mentors as well. If the parents are not available, a mentor should be available for the child to express themselves. Sometimes kids can't talk to their parents, especially the teenagers.
I was just going to say, just jumping in real quick, kids don't want to talk to their parents because the parents, a lot of parents, you said it earlier when I first came in, you were saying that parents don't parent the way they used to. And then even though they don't, they still say things like, just do what I say do. And the kids are watching them saying, I don't want to do that. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. You're absolutely right. Sometimes mentors are the best. They can connect with, the child, and sometimes the kids can express themselves in ways that they can't express themselves to their parents, or if the parent is not available. Someone, a mentor, and I mean, it could be another family member that can be a mentor, or someone in the community. And I think, and I believe that the community needs to come together a little bit more, because I worked a lot in the community. I mean, that was basically 15 years of my work, going in the home, speaking with the families and the kids, and there weren't enough resources for the caregiver and the child. I felt like the local police, the local fire department, the YMCA, where all of these resources should know that, okay, we had crisis in the home. There's some trauma that went on. They should be able to know this information and assist. And there should be even more resources there. And I don't think there's enough in a lot of the communities, period.
Shatonia, we just had our Long Beach Mayoral Candidates Forum here, sponsored by the arts council for Long Beach, and it was we had all these, it's election time, right? And we're talking, no matter what city you listen to, you watch, they're always talking about the homelessness issue, and the need for mental health workers as opposed to police to get to the services to the people that are out on the street, these people who are having these manic episodes and all of that. And one of the candidates said that he wanted to kind of pair the National Guard with the police to move the people off the street, which I thought was kind of crazy, in my opinion. But, talk a little bit about the intersection of mental health workers, like what you're talking about, and the work that you've been doing on the front line of going into people's homes and trying to heal families. How do we marry mental health workers with the police?
That's a good question.
You have to want to first. You have to want to. The system has to want to do that first in order to find those solutions.
In my past work, we had relations with the local sheriff's department, but it was, I would say 90% of it was, a reactive state. Oh, a child acts out and, is detained for whatever reason. I would say 10% would be, oh, let's have a basketball game with the kids and the sheriff's department to get to know what we do here, and kind of educate them a little more and get them involved. I think there's a small percentage of where, the law enforcement understands, for example, the foster care system, and if they see a child on the street who is a foster youth, they're able to understand, okay, there may be some mental health issues, but I'm saying once a child returns to a home, if they were in residential, and then they return to their community, there's not enough resources where the local police department understands what's going on in the community with the trauma in that home. I mean, I think people understand, gang prevention, and the police are aware of that. So what about mental health, and how do we kind of, work together with all of these local fire and police departments and things like that, and other resources too, even the church. The church should be involved if the family is willing to do that. Or maybe they just need to be introduced to it, It's just always like that mental health team to come in and hopefully save the day, or save this family, or continue services, whereas there needs to be more help in the community.
So Jose, expand on that. You think the community needs to want that, huh? The desire has to be there.
Okay, first, the desire has to be there. And second, and most importantly, the training has to be there, right? Greg, you're a Marine, right?
Yes,
as a Marine, one of the first things they did was put a rifle in your hand.
Yes, right? They did. Every Marine, a rifleman.
And they put that rifle in your hand, and you carried that rifle for all of basic. You slept with that rifle. You trained with that rifle so that you could deploy that tool when you needed it for what you needed it.
Yeah.
Right? With our law enforcement agencies, that's their training. They're not training to go into a circumstance, assess the circumstance to see whether or not you need a weapon to diffuse that circumstance or not. They're training a lot like you as a soldier would have trained. They're training, shoot them to the ground. They're not training, come in, see if there's a problem. Even on mental health calls, that's simply not their training. And I'm an advocate of law enforcement. I'm not against law enforcement at all. However, very practically, if you don't train for this, then you cannot be deployed for this. It's that simple.
Mhm.
So what I see is a need for law enforcement. If law enforcement is going to be, first of all, they shouldn't be the ones called out to mental health cases. There should be a completely different department that is first deployed to that. But if law enforcement is going to be utilized in that way, then they either need a subset of law enforcement, or the police officers who are going to go to those calls need to be trained in how to diffuse those circumstances
Yeah.
and not first go to their weapon,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Because what they're trying to do is drive a thumbtack with a sledgehammer.
Mhm.
Those methodologies are completely incongruous,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so that in most jurisdictions, if there is somebody who is having a mental health crisis, the first people on site are police officers, and they're simply not trained to handle that.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's a matter of practicality, right?
Right. So where do we get the resources to do such? There's got to be a shift of dollars. So I guess that's what some folks mean when they say defund the police. Is that what it is?
That term is completely misunderstood. We
Mhm.
need to throw that term out and replace it with something else,
Need something new?
because it's a matter of pivot. It's a matter of
Mhm.
shifting resources from one concentration to another,
Mhm.
right? And not entire funds, but pieces of the police have a lot of money. We put a
Mhm.
lot of money into our police forces,
Somebody
right?
said 45% of the budget was going into police in Long Beach. That's what I heard
So
last night.
so
Yikes.
for sure, you buy 3 fewer tank vehicles that can roll down the streets of the hood, and you would probably have enough budget money to be able to fund a segment of law enforcement that is specifically trained for mental health calls. I
Wait a
mean,
minute. It's funny
my
you
mental
said
health.
it's funny you brought up the tank vehicles because Griselda Suarez and I saw a tank vehicle together not too long ago on our streets, and we were trying to figure out, okay, how we get that booger flat?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Oh, so funny.
my mental health professionals in this circle, right? You know, we can clearly understand that without that kind of training, a police officer shows up onto a scene and they're afraid because they don't understand what they're looking at, right?
Mm.
They don't understand a manic episode versus a schizophrenic episode versus a whatever, or versus a drug induced episode, right?
Mhm.
And if you don't understand, there is no way you can successfully negotiate whatever that circumstance happens to be.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And for most people, mental health and mental health episodes are incredibly frightening from the
Mhm.
outside perspective,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I
Because
think that
everybody goes,
that's
oh, it's just
Griselda.
a crazy person, you know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm sorry,
I
Shatonia, go
think
ahead.
that that's one level of it, but that other level of like a proactive approach,
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
where the police come in as a positive, still being trained but come in as a positive entity within the family unit or whatever, or in the community, the fire department as well, and all the other resources amongst that community. Being proactive as opposed to being reactive
Absolutely.
all the
Preemptive
time.
is always better. Preemptive is always better. So if we could have events for our law enforcement and fire departments around mental health and wellness, if they could throw those types of events that would help to train both them and the community, that would be ideal, because that would happen long before you have these circumstances where it's acute, it's an emergency, right?
You know,
So what
I know, Griselda. I wanna just kind of. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are thus far, hearing everything. I mean, we're over here. We're arts advocates. We got these high level mental health superstars out here and dropping knowledge. What are your reflections as you hear this? Are you there? There you are.
Yes.
Mhm.
My reflections, what I'm hearing, it is the lack of resources.
Mhm.
And if we just look at Long Beach, right? And it's been about a dozen years, so a little over a decade, that parent resource counselors were taken out of the unified school district, right? So these were folks that were in the schools, um, that connected to families, connected to resources. They were not necessarily a academic counselor and not a social worker therapist, right? They were in the middle. And I think after a dozen years, we're seeing the impact of families not getting assistance to be connected on whatever they need, right? If it is it therapy, is it testing for certain learning abilities? Is it even after school programs?
Mhm.
What we're seeing, I think, and what we're trying to do, as an arts professional, is insert whatever we can, whatever kind of resource we can, back into schools and neighborhoods and communities that need it, right? That
Mhm.
are most impacted.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And I grew up in LA. I grew up in East LA, and those kinds of resources were not available.
Mhm.
And it was a lot through a teacher saying, "Hey, you're a very creative person," right? It was someone looking out for me, and the family. In the family, we were creative, and we were creative in the home,
Mhm.
but we're not creative in the school, right? So there was a lack of resource there.
Mhm.
Um, and I have seen a large impact personally on creativity and therapy. I know that it is a very good tool that I'm sure your experts here can talk about. Um, and it needs to be offered more. It needs to be available more, right? So we just try to provide as much as we can those resources, those activities when we can to the community.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, Candy, I'm just thinking, Jose and Shatonia, they're talking about, proactive work with the police and, intersecting and all that. Okay, so now, the who are the people supposed to call in your work when the household is on fire and folks are fighting to the degree of physical violence? I mean, that's a crisis, right? That's a code blue, all hands on deck. So what's your idea, your thoughts in being proactive in that space?
Well, let me address a couple of things and I'm going to come back
Mm.
to that.
Okay.
So, our agency, as well as other nonprofits, do train the police and the sheriff, probation, and mental health. We've had contracts with all of them to help them understand what trauma looks like from a
Mm.
cultural and age perspective. Because what happens in my house does not look the same as in an Asian house, does not look the same as in an Indian house or in a indigenous house or in any other house. So they need to understand. So when they show up, they need to be culturally relevant and understand that my needs are different. Also, when we look at trauma,
Mm.
people think that, let's say, a person who is houseless or homeless, that that's what they're dealing with. But they're dealing with abandonment. They're dealing with hunger. They're dealing with poverty. They're dealing with mental health. They're dealing with sexual assault. They may be dealing with gang violence. We have to look at the fact that there are multiple levels of trauma that any one person is dealing with. And we need to have the right person or the right group of people with wraparound services providing those services for them. And so when we talk about who's going to be the best to show up, there needs to be not a particular group, but several groups. So if someone is showing up and they have a mental health issue, we need to have a Department of Mental Health, or we need to have a special group of people who specialize in addressing mental health and trauma for those people. If we have gang violence, we need to have some interventionists there. We also need to have someone who specializes in domestic violence if there's a fight going on. But now, in the case of a fight or violence, the police need to be there as well, because that person, if they are fighting and they're fighting with a gun or a knife, they don't have a problem shooting whoever is on the scene. That includes children, men, women, animals, and sometimes law enforcement. And especially if someone else pops in the scene, because they're like, well, who are you? There's so many different there's never a single answer. There has to be multiple answers, and that's why it's important that we all collaborate together. This show is so important because you're bringing five groups, five different people together, and five people together, we can work and say that, okay, you can address this need, you can address this need. How can we all address it together? There's never a single answer. And we need to have more nonprofits partnering with the schools. I should say we should have more schools partnering with nonprofits, because we're here. We're ready to do the work. You know, sometimes I'm going to say it. Not only do we not want to take away some of the funding from the police, but there's a lot of agencies that don't want to invest in nonprofits who specialize in this work. And people think the term nonprofit means that, oh, I don't have to pay you. Somebody's got to pay me for the work that I do. And yes, there are times when I have grants and I have funding. And when that comes, we do a workshop called Emotional Intelligence. We have a Black man who is an artist out of Buffalo, New York, that does work with our kids. And it's all done through music and art. And when we send the flyer out, we send it out to our network. But is our network sharing it with people who really need to know this? As a matter of fact, 50% of the kids that are in our program are in Long Beach. And in this backpack, they get a backpack with wireless headphones. They get a complete art set, paper, pens, art, painting, drawing, coloring, whatever you need. It also comes with a little gift card so they can buy a snack. And here's the thing, we pay kids to participate in this program because we want young people to know that we value their time. We value their participation, and we need to fund more programs like this and engage with other agencies and organizations. We're not trying to replace anyone. We are not mental health therapists. I partner with a mental health agency, a Black woman who has her own agency, and we pair our kids with Black therapists, Latinx therapists, so that they are working with someone who can address their needs. And we provide this for free because of the funding we have. But we need to make sure that there are agencies that are continuing to fund our programs so that we can continue to partner with other agencies. You're on mute, Greg.
Let's talk about the funding real quickly here. You know, it's interesting now we're in this state of recovery. We're faced with an election right now, and we don't know how the outcomes of those elections may affect the flow of funding necessary to do the work that we're required. What would you say, Candy, to some of these politicians out here that we know about all around our region? What do you want them to know?
What I really want them to know, I can't say right now. But I'm going to say this. They need to wake up and smell the coffee. First off, we are in such a serious state of decline. Most elected officials don't understand that we saw a 50% rise in girls, Black and Latinx girls between the age of 12 to 16 going to emergency rooms. And they didn't realize, the doctors didn't realize until they were there, that these were attempted suicides.
My goodness.
We saw so many kids coming out of COVID, not only because of isolation, because of sexual assault, because of domestic violence, because of hunger, because of the lack of we are people that are not only sexual, but we are social people. And so we were left to our own regards. Parents had to go to work and left kids in their home all by themselves to figure out what are they supposed to do. Now, what is a average 12-year-old kid supposed to do from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.? And school wasn't in. And they also didn't have a laptop. And they only had a cell phone that their mom or their dad or their auntie or whoever took to work with them. And sometimes their homes were in substandard conditions. Of course, we're going to lose our mind. Heck, as a grown adult, I'm going to lose my mind. And so elected officials need to look at how can they allocate a certain amount of money. And I'm not saying 48 or 45%. How about 5%? Do you know that women-led organizations, women-led nonprofits get 1.7% of all the funding in the United States? That's a damn shame. And given the fact that most nonprofits are run by women. And so if we are doing the work and we want to partner with agencies, so like our agency, I hire 6 people, but we also collaborate, and I give funding to other agencies to come and work with us to do this work. So it's critical. Elected officials need to look at the community and how can they continue to support the entire community, including nonprofits who work with families, who work with schools, who work with everyone in the community.
And that speaks again to desire, right? That speaks again to desire.
Yes.
If we know that the power lies in women-led nonprofits and we don't fund them because we don't want to. Right. We don't and being real, we all
That's
in this
what we do.
room, we all in this room, we understand that there is a great deal of power in the Black and brown community in this country. Right. If you look to all the cultural cues in this country, music, entertainment, it all is born out of us. Right. There is a great deal of power in terms of being resourceful, in terms of being creative, in terms of work ethic. Right. And it is an unfortunate fact that historically those are the communities that have systemically been worked into the ground. So you don't fund women-led nonprofits because women-led nonprofits are working to empower these communities that you don't want empowered.
Griselda Suarez, what do you want the politicians to know?
I agree with Jose Angel and I agree with all you, Candy, Shatonia. Like this is really important that there is no single answer to the budget question. I think oftentimes when politicians, elected officials look at budgets, they look at them in silos. They look at them to reach an objective that is not intersectional. And so they will continue to fund that one objective to reach a number, a data point that will help in any other way but the community. And so if we begin looking at funding intersectionally and really seeing that in Long Beach, for example, providing more funds for the health department is going to help the community. Providing more funds in the libraries are going to fund the community. Providing more money to parks department is going to help the community. And these three departments are about quality of life, and they're the least funded in the city of Long Beach. So there's no way to move forward. I really liked how Candy said it, right? It's not one single answer. There's multiple answers for the solution here.
All right. Shatonia, I know you're out there in the East Coast right now but it's still election time. What do you want the politicians to say? And you're familiar with this region anyway, yes? And when are you coming back?
I'm going to keep most of my comments about money, politicians, for another platform. This is so much to me deeper than, what we want.
Uh-oh, we lost your audio. Hey, we lost your audio there. I don't know what happened. Let's see. There we are. You muted yourself there.
I'm sorry.
Okay, there you are. Right.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. We couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. Like I was saying, I'm going to keep my comments about politicians and money for another type of platform. But I mean, this goes so much deeper than asking for money to fund mental health programs or, after school resources, et cetera, et cetera. The thing is, why are we in 2022 having to do this? Why are we still asking, or why do we have to continue to beg or ask, at the county or state levels or whatever, money to fund for mental health? I just, and again, it goes deeper than that, and I'm not going to get into it on this platform. I think it's a deeper level spiritually in regards to a spiritual attack. But again, that's another platform. But they should see, it's not important to them. It's not important enough. We shouldn't be in this predicament in regards, for funding for our kids and for families, for mental health. We should not be.
All right.
Hey, Greg.
Yes.
Can I say this? That I agree to a certain degree. We also need to stand up ourselves. The families needs to stand up. The people need to stand up and speak loud so that the elected officials will know what is important to us. Sometimes we get to a point where we're like, okay, I don't know what to say, or I've said it before. We have to continue to speak up. And it is important that we call our elected officials and say, you need to invest in the arts. You need to invest in our children. You need to invest in our schools. Guess what? There are communities that do. And we know those communities, and they don't look like ours. Because if we don't speak up, then we get nothing. My mama used to say, yes, I said it. My mama used to say, closed mouth don't get fed.
Yes.
And if you don't say anything, guess what? You get nothing. So speak up, everyone. You have the power. Elected officials are elected by you. I'm not saying, any elected official is bad or good. I'm just saying we have to take more of a vested interest in what our outcome looks like.
And I think one of the most important ways that we can do that we can speak in a way that we are heard is by, we have a lot of power, a lot of purchasing power in this country, is to hold back them Jordan dollars. You know what I'm saying? If we hold back them little Jordan dollars, them little Gucci dollars, invest those little dollars in our community, other people are bound to hear, because that's a lot of dollars that's a lot of currency that goes into the greater system. That if we hold on to those dollars, that's a huge amplifier for us. And that's one of the things that we don't understand yet about the power that we have. If we're holding on to those dollars, reinvesting those dollars in the community, then we don't necessarily have to go outside of our community to find funding for these types of programs. But a lot of it really comes down to education, and that's my business, right? It comes down to us uprooting a lot of the trauma, historical trauma, generational trauma. We've been living with this for centuries. So it's not like we're going to uproot this in a matter of a couple of decades. It's getting at the heart of the problem and tapping into the demographics that really need the information, and that's the babies. Teach the babies, and then future generations will know better. Right?
Teach the babies, and future generations will know better. That's
Yes.
awesome way to get out of here today. This morning. That's a good one. Look, that'll preach. Yeah, man. Thank you guys so much for coming on Sipping Coffee with me, Coffee Conversations with Greg J. We just like to inform and inspire the people from a culturally relevant perspective, globally, that is. Thank you to Griselda Suarez. She had to go out to another meeting out there. All you busy sisters, the sisterhood is going on, boy. You just kind of catch these sisters when you can, That's that's what it is. Good. I love it. Thank you, Candy, for coming through today. So awesome. Shatonia, I know you out there on the front lines of this mental health work, and God bless you in the work that you have done. And just really, I know what you do, and you are really. It is just an honor to know you, and thank you for your contribution on this morning. It's so awesome. Brother Jose Angel Castro will be together out here on Saturday. It's the Long Beach Art Walk, right? We're turning the art park into an arts and wellness village. And so the iShift, give it to me, iShift Mental Health Collective.
iShift Collective Wellness Mini Conference.
And you're going to be doing what now? Sound bath?
We're going to have a sound bath, followed by a creative writing workshop, followed by kinetic painting, that I'm teaching the kinetic painting class, followed by intro to Reiki. So we have a really nice palette of wellness and mindfulness practices that are going to go on Saturday.
What is a sound bath?
A sound bath is essentially, all of these things point at what Shatonia was talking about earlier, what we were talking about earlier, and that is being able to shift your perspective, right? To recenter yourself, get back into the moment. So a sound bath is just a way of focusing through sound. So our instructor, the person who's facilitating, has a number of instruments that she will be playing as she guides people through this sort of presence, this mindfulness, this meditation.
So
and
now
you're literally bathed in sound.
Like, okay, so I'm an audio person, so I'm feeling this. I just need to have a clearer understanding. So is it the tone, those like the frequencies that tap into certain areas of your brain? Is that what we're talking about?
Exactly. The instruments that she uses, series of different types of meditation bowls, of different types of bells. Those frequencies enter the body and affect the body on different levels. The only thing that is required is that you're open to the process. That's it. That you come to the process sort of with an open mind. Even a little crack of open mind helps, right? And then if you surrender to the process, your body will benefit from it no matter what.
So when I'm running my
body mind, really.
So when I'm running my miles, and I run some miles now. I go hard, 10, 11, 12 miles at a time, but it's the music that I'm listening to that when I get into that, it's because it's meditation for me, right? And so it's like when I'm in that space, they call it the runner's high, whatever, when I'm in that space, it's the music, right? And so if I'm listening to, typically I'll listen to gospel music, and then I'll follow that with some really straight ahead jazz like Thelonious Monk and all that. And I can hear in those, Stevie Wonder, all that. I could hear those rhythms in my consciousness. So this is the
Mhm.
same.
It's essentially the same. And that's another thing about wellness practices that people don't get. People think that wellness practices are somewhere up here in the sky, but they're incredibly practical. So to use another Marine Corps term, what you do when you run, that's cadence,
It is. I
right?
still sing
And
with cadences.
when you isolate what you hear into the music that's coming directly into your head, that's essentially moving sound bathing, right? So all of these things are interrelated. They don't it's This is a time where I think we found one really important aspect of life is, like we were talking about in the circle, is not to think either or, it's and.
Mhm.
So your running is a wellness practice, not just about the physical practice, right?
It's
The
my drug of choice.
Exactly. It pumps all manner of endorphins, all manner of dopamine into your body. It makes you feel, that's why they call it a runner's high, right? That is a wellness practice. It's not just about my cardiovascular fitness. It's not just about my muscular fitness. It's mostly about what it does to shift my perspective in mile 3.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So the things that we're just looking for ways, technologies that will help us shift that perspective.
That's dope. That's dope. Candy
And
Lewis,
offering
what's
it to our
next on
people.
your plate here? What's going on over there in the Positive Results Center?
Well, there's so much that we're doing. We are in I think, our third cohort, about to start our emotional intelligence workshops for youth. I'll send the flyers to you. Please
Yes,
share
yes,
them.
yes,
We are
yes.
also in I think, our fifth cohort of our small group mental health sessions, specifically for Black youth. And this year, this cohort, we're going to do a group just for Black girls and just for Black boys, as well as for parents. We're going to be at the KGLH Women's Conference, so we hope everyone stops by our booth. And we are just working to create awareness. As my brother said, Jose Angel Castro, um, all the work that we do is always about awareness to create and prevent violence. We cannot do this work unless we are creating awareness. There are other people that are doing intervention, but what people don't know, and I'm so glad you spoke on working with youth, is if a youth or a child is abused at an early age, by the time they're 23, if they don't have intervention, then the likelihood of them being exposed to increased and more violence is about 70%. So by the time, if they're abused, like let's say at 5, by the time they're 23, it will happen again at least 3 more times on average. So we've got to create the awareness. If anyone is interested in collaborating with us or having us come in and work with your youth or even adults, please contact us.
All right. Where can we get you?
You can reach us at info@prc123.org, or you can go to our website, prc123.org. You can find us on Instagram as well as Facebook. And you can always contact me, Candy Lewis.
Hey, that's a good stuff. Good stuff. All right. I put your website there in the chat, and then we'll
Thank you.
put some more information out. We're going to be joining Jose Angel Castro on this Saturday from, you know what, we're calling the whole thing. So it's a Long Beach Art Walk, right? Every second Saturday in our section of the city of Long Beach. We are located in the East Village Arts District, but the general community in the area, we come together and do an art walk. And so essentially you can come to our region and go to walk all of the different shops that are there, the restaurants are there. there's so few galleries that are open and all of that. And it's a thing. And there's a tiny little park in the hidden on Elm 150 Elm Avenue between Broadway and First.
That park is the
And
vibe, yo. That park
it
is
is
the
the
vibe.
vibe, right? It
That park
is
is
the
the vibe.
vibe. And so we were taking it over, and we've got all of the activities that Jose Angel Castro has described. And then we're going to end the evening with the Long Beach Blues Society. They're a staple here. That's going to be kind of cool. They're Bill Grisolia. I just realized that I've known this man a little more than a year, and I've been saying his last name incorrectly all this time. But Bill Grisolia and the Blues, they're coming through, and it's going to be kind of awesome. And hopefully you all can make that. Also, you did mention it there, Candy. They got the May 21st. The KJLH Women's Health Expo will be at the Long Beach Convention Center. So proud of that event. I remember it was 50 women inside of a Greater Bethany Church on Western, back in the day when we first started. And now it's taking over ginormous municipal convention centers. And so that's a good thing. Congratulations to my friends over at KJLH. That evening, I would like to point out, we're always talking about arts and culture. Long Beach Symphony Pops is having their monthly concert, and they're doing a tribute to Aretha Franklin. And I was able to get the KJLH Radio Free Performance Choir to be the backup. So the KJLH Performance Choir is going to be with the Long Beach Symphony, and the sister's name is Capathia Jenkins. She's like a Broadway star, and she's been taking this music of Aretha all around the country and pairing it with symphonies, and the Long Beach Symphony is performing that on May 21st in the evening. So there it is. It's going down. Yes, yes, yes. Coffee Conversations is always right here on our Facebook page, Coffee Conversations with Greg J. You know what I said? I was going to put my YouTube link in here. I just need y'all to get this real quick. We need you to go onto YouTube and like and subscribe so that we can get our algorithms up in that space there. But you can get Coffee Conversations right there at my YouTube channel, as well as we'll be repurposing the audio so that this can come out on podcast, and you can get it wherever you get your favorite podcast: Apple, Spreaker, Google, Stitcher, Spotify. Just you name it, just put in Coffee Conversations. It's there. Bam. We're growing, y'all. We're doing new paradigms of broadcasting. If you got an opportunity to see our production when we produced the Long Beach Mayoral Candidates Forum, please check it out. It's out there on Coffee Conversations with Greg J as well. And you get some really good introspect from the candidates, especially if you're here in the Long Beach area. We are hoping to do some stuff with LA as well. A lot of you are hitting me up saying, hey, what about the LA, LA mayoral race? Bernard Parks sounded off on Rick Caruso on our show. So that was a good one, and so we're still in the game, still trying to bring you cultural relevance. All right, y'all, got to go. Hey, give me a 30-second mindfulness exercise, Jose Angel Castro. Come on, let's go before we go. Send this off.
30 seconds. Here we go. If you can, put your feet flat on the floor. You're welcome to close your eyes. You don't have to. It's fine. What we're gonna do is we're gonna center ourselves in 12 breaths. In 12 breaths. So a breath is both inhalation and exhalation. In 12, we're going to center our bodies, weight ourselves, and be ready for the rest of the day. So here we go. One breath. Let all the breath in your lungs out. Shh. We're breathing in and out. That's one. Breathe in and out. Feel the weight of your body in the space. Breathe in and out. That's three. Breathe in and out. That's four. Welcome energy. Breathe in and out. That's five. Welcome presence. Be in this moment at this time. Breathe in and out. That's half a dozen. We're letting go of whatever we don't need. Breathe in and out. That's 7. Breathe in and out. 8. 4 more. Breathe in and out. That's 9. Good. Breathe in and out. That's 10. See the rest of your day being beautiful. Breathe in and out. That's 11. See yourself being beautiful. Breathe in. Last one. And
Love one another, y'all. Peace and blessings.
Thanks so much.